My name is Lucas, and for as long as I can remember, I've always been the kind of person who plays it safe. At 28 years old, I live in San Francisco, working as a financial analyst at a mid-sized investment firm. On paper, my life seems to be going just fine. I have a steady job, a decent salary, and the kind of lifestyle most people would envy. But in reality, I feel trapped, suffocated by a life that doesn't belong to me. Every day, I sit in front of a computer, balancing spreadsheets, analyzing market trends, and making reports that no one seems to care about. It's a cycle of monotony, and I've grown numb to it. The work is fine. I'm good at it, in fact, but it's draining the life out of me. I can't remember the last time I felt truly alive at my job. There's no sense of passion, no drive beyond the paycheck. It's just an endless grind that leaves me empty at the end of the day. A couple of months ago, my girlfriend, Sarah, ended our 2-year relationship. She didn't yell. She didn't accuse me of anything, but her words still cut deep. "You've been gone for a long time, Lucas," she said, her eyes sad but resolute. "I don't think you even realize it." And she was right. I hadn't realized it until then. The truth is, I had become a stranger to myself. My career had consumed me, and in the process I had shut out everything else. Sarah, my friends, even the hobbies and passions that once brought me joy. I was just going through the motions, and she could see it. Sarah left because she couldn't wait for me to figure it out anymore. It wasn't because of a fight, or because I had done something wrong. It was simply because I had disconnected from the world around me, and she had no place in that. This morning, I woke up late, a feeling I was all too familiar with. The alarm went off 5 times, and I hit snooze each time. My head was still foggy from the late-night calls with clients in different time zones, and I dragged myself through the morning routine. Shower, breakfast, a quick check of emails. I was running behind as usual, rushing out the door without any real sense of where I was going, just following the autopilot of my life. As I hurried to the subway, my mind was racing with thoughts about work, about what I had to do, about the never-ending cycle of tasks. I didn't even realize that I had gotten on the wrong train until a few stops in. I glanced up at the station map, and a knot twisted in my stomach. I was heading east, not west, the complete wrong direction. It seemed so typical of my life. Another small mistake, another sign that I was completely out of sync with where I was supposed to be. I sighed, sinking into my seat, feeling the weight of frustration pressing down on me. How had I gotten so lost? I sat there, waiting for the next stop, thinking about how this one little error felt like just another symptom of a life that wasn't mine. I had become so disconnected from everything that mattered, just living on autopilot, trying to get through each day without truly engaging with it. I sat there for a while, staring out the window of the subway car, lost in my thoughts. The train rumbled on, its noise drowning out the constant buzzing in my mind. I didn't even realize where I was going anymore. It felt like I had been riding this train for years, both literally and figuratively. I had become a passenger in my own life, letting everything pass me by without taking control of where I was heading. I finally decided I had to get off at the next stop, turn around, and head back. It felt like the only logical thing to do, correct the mistake, get back on track. But as I sat there, resigned to the idea of a wasted morning, I started thinking about how many times I had tried to do the same thing with my life. Each time I hit a dead end, I thought I could just reset, go back, and start again. But that didn't seem to fix anything. I had been stuck in a loop for years. I'd convinced myself that if I kept trying, I'd eventually find a way to make everything work. But I had nothing to show for it. No real joy, no excitement, no sense of purpose. I looked around the train. A few commuters were reading, 1 or 2 were dozing off, but no one seemed to be looking at me. I was just another faceless person, a part of the crowd, lost in the rush of the morning commute. I felt invisible, and it scared me more than I wanted to admit. As the train pulled into the next station, I made my way toward the door, already thinking about the apology I'd have to offer at work. I was always late, always giving some excuse for my tardiness, but it was starting to feel like I didn't even care about making excuses anymore. I wasn't worried about the consequences. I was numb to it all. But just as the doors began to close, a voice broke through the monotony of my thoughts. "You know, you're exactly where you need to be." I turned to look. An older man, probably in his late 60s, was sitting across from me. His eyes were kind, and there was something about his presence that felt both calming and unsettling. He had lowered his newspaper and was looking at me directly, not in a judgmental way, but with a knowing look that made my skin prickle. "Excuse me?" I said, not sure if I had heard him right. "You think you're on the wrong train," he continued, smiling softly. "But you're exactly where you need to be." I blinked, feeling a jolt of confusion. How could this stranger know what I was thinking? How could he know that I was spiraling, that my life felt like it was heading in the wrong direction? I didn't say anything, but I could feel my heart racing. The man gave me a calm look, almost as if he had been waiting for me to ask more, to open up. He went on, "You've been running from your real life for a long time now. You don't have to keep going in circles. It's okay to stop, to change direction." His words hit me like a wave, unexpected and intense. I had never heard anyone speak to me like that before, so directly, yet so kindly. For a moment, I felt exposed, like he had reached inside my chest and pulled out everything I had been hiding from myself. "You're living a life that isn't yours, Lucas," he said, leaning forward slightly, "and it's costing you more than you realize." I wanted to argue, to tell him he didn't understand, but his gaze held me still. There was something about him, something that made me pause, made me question everything I had been telling myself about who I was and where I was going. I wanted to say something, but I didn't have the words. The train began to slow, and the doors opened. The man reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small envelope, handing it to me. "When you get off, go to this address. Don't question it. Just trust me." I stared at the envelope, my mind racing. It felt insane. What was this man asking me to do? I was late for work, my life was falling apart, and now he was telling me to go to some unknown address based on nothing but his cryptic words. "Why should I listen to you?" I finally asked, my voice tight. He smiled, a knowing, almost sad smile. "Because you've been waiting for someone to tell you it's time to change. This is your chance." The train slowed to a stop. I looked at the envelope in my hand. The choice was mine. I could get off, follow the man's advice, and risk everything. Or I could go back to my miserable routine. I stood there, torn between the life I knew and the unknown path the man had suggested. As the doors closed, I made my decision. Something in me said that maybe, just maybe, this was the moment everything could change. I stood there, holding the envelope in my hand, my mind a whirlwind of doubt and confusion. The train doors closed, and I watched the platform slip away as the train resumed its journey. I couldn't stop thinking about what had just happened. Had I really just taken advice from a stranger on the subway? Who was he, and how did he know so much about me? More importantly, why did I feel like I had no choice but to listen to him? There was something about the way he spoke, the way he seemed to understand exactly what I was going through, that made me feel like I couldn't ignore him. As I stared at the envelope, a strange sense of urgency began to build inside me. It wasn't logical. I wasn't the kind of person who made impulsive decisions, especially ones that could potentially derail my life even further. But something deep inside me was telling me to trust him. Maybe it was desperation. Maybe it was that gnawing feeling that I was on the brink of something bigger, something I had been avoiding for years. Whatever it was, I knew that I couldn't just let this moment slip away. The train ride stretched on, each passing minute making me feel more restless. My thoughts kept circling back to my job, my broken relationship with Sarah, the overwhelming feeling of being stuck. I had built my entire life around stability, around playing it safe, and yet it had left me feeling empty. I had sacrificed my own desires to meet expectations, whether they were my parents' or society's, and now I was paying the price. I couldn't keep living this way. The man's words kept echoing in my mind. "You're living a life that isn't yours." When the train finally stopped, I hesitated for a moment before standing up. I had no idea where I was going, no idea what this address could mean for my future. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was finally doing something real, something that wasn't driven by fear or obligation. I stepped off the train and walked onto the platform, feeling the weight of the envelope in my hand. The bustling commuters around me barely noticed as I made my way toward the exit, my heart beating faster with each step. I pulled out my phone to check the address, but I could hardly focus on the screen. My hands were shaking, my mind still spinning with uncertainty. I walked in the direction the map suggested, weaving through the crowded streets, my feet moving almost on autopilot. Each step felt heavier, like I was moving through a fog, unsure of what I would find at the end. But there was also a sense of freedom in it. For the first time in years, I wasn't thinking about work or deadlines or the life I had been living. I was just walking, following a thread of hope, uncertain but strangely calm. After a few blocks, I finally arrived at the address, Hillcrest Community Learning Center. The building was small, tucked between two larger, more modern structures, almost hidden from view. It looked old, but well kept, with a simple sign in front announcing the center's name. I stood there for a moment, just staring at it, feeling the weight of what I was about to do. What if this was a mistake? What if I was making the biggest decision of my life based on a stranger's cryptic words? But then I remembered what he had said. You're exactly where you need to be. With a deep breath, I pushed open the door and stepped inside. The smell of coffee and old books greeted me, along with the hum of conversation. I walked up to the front desk, where a woman in her 40s greeted me with a warm smile. "Can I help you?" she asked. "I'm here to see Claire," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "She's expecting me?" She raised an eyebrow, then nodded. "Claire's in the back, just down the hall, second door on the left." I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat, and walked down the hallway. My heart was pounding in my chest as I approached the door. What was I even doing here? What if I was out of my depth, out of my element? But before I could second-guess myself, I pushed open the door and stepped inside. The room was small but cozy, filled with a group of adults seated around a few tables. They were engaged in a discussion, and when Claire saw me, she smiled and stood up. "Hi, you must be Lucas," she said, extending a hand. "I wasn't expecting you today, but it's good to see you. Welcome." I shook her hand, unsure of what to say next. I'm not sure why I'm here. I got an envelope with this address and I was told to come. Claire's smile widened and she gestured for me to take a seat. "Well, you're in the right place. Let's start by seeing how we can work together. Take a seat. You're not the first to come here, looking for something more, something real." I sat down, feeling a mix of confusion and excitement. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. I sat there, still trying to process what had just happened. The class had ended, and the students had filed out, thanking Claire as they left. I was left in the room with her, still holding on to the envelope that had led me here. I hadn't expected to feel so overwhelmed by the simplicity of it all. The building, the people, the work, it was nothing like the high-rise offices I was used to. No polished corporate lingo, no deadlines pressing down on me, no constant sense of competition. It was just people, real people, trying to learn, to grow, to improve. And somehow, this felt like the most alive I had felt in years. Claire noticed my silence and smiled. "I know it's a lot to take in," she said as she started to gather her things. "It's not exactly the corporate world you're used to, is it?" I shook my head, still unsure how to respond. "No, it's different, in a good way. I didn't expect it to feel so personal." She nodded, leaning against the desk. "That's what we're going for here. Adult education isn't just about teaching a skill. It's about building a connection, helping people find their confidence, something they've lost along the way. And it's not just for the students. It's for us, too." I swallowed, still feeling that strange combination of excitement and fear. I don't know why I'm here. I've been running from my own life for so long. I don't even know if I'm cut out for this. Claire looked at me, her gaze soft but piercing. "Maybe you're here because you finally stopped running. Maybe you're here because, deep down, you know you have something to give. You don't need to have all the answers right now. But being here, in this space, it's a start. Sometimes, the hardest part is just showing up." Her words landed deep inside me, something shifting in my chest. I had spent so much of my life trying to fit into a mold, doing what I thought was expected of me, following a path that others had laid out for me. But this place, these people, they weren't about fitting into any mold. They were about being real, about embracing the mess, the imperfections, and still pushing forward. I didn't expect this, I said, my voice a little hoarse. I've spent so many years pretending I was fine, pretending that the work I was doing mattered. But it doesn't. It's just empty. Claire smiled, understanding in her eyes. You're not alone in feeling that way. A lot of people here feel the same, especially when they first come. But you can make a difference. You've got the experience, the skills. You can help people see things differently. Show them that they have more potential than they realize. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to care. I felt a wave of emotion, an urge to do something real, something that actually made a difference in people's lives. I hadn't realized until that moment how much I had been yearning for something more meaningful, something that would make me feel connected, like I was truly contributing to the world around me. I don't know if I'm ready, I admitted, though part of me already knew the answer, but I think I need to try. Claire gave me an encouraging nod. The best teachers don't have all the answers. They're willing to learn, willing to listen, and they're willing to help others grow along the way. You've got it in you. For the first time in a long while, I felt something stir deep inside me. Hope. Maybe this was the beginning of something new. Maybe this was where I was meant to be. I didn't have it all figured out, but for the first time in a while, I wasn't running from my life. I was ready to face it, to build something meaningful, to finally stop pretending I wasn't a teacher. As I stood up to leave, I looked at Claire, feeling a sense of gratitude that I couldn't quite put into words. She had given me the space to see my potential, to imagine a different future, a future where I didn't just exist, but where I could truly make a difference. And for the first time in years, that idea didn't seem like a dream. It felt like a possibility. I left the Hillcrest Community Learning Center that day, feeling a strange mix of excitement and uncertainty. It was like I had stepped out of one world and into another, but I wasn't sure if I was ready for the transition. I had only spent a few hours there, but already I felt like a different person. I could feel the shift inside me, a shift I had been avoiding for years. I walked through the streets of San Francisco, my mind racing with questions. What now? Could I really leave everything behind and start something new? Could I really commit to a life of teaching when I had been so deeply entrenched in a career I didn't even like? The next few days were a blur. I went to work, but my mind wasn't there. My colleagues noticed that something was off, but I didn't have the energy to pretend everything was fine. Every time I sat down at my desk, staring at the endless spreadsheets and emails, I felt like I was suffocating. It wasn't the work, it was me. I had outgrown this version of myself, and it was starting to feel like I was living someone else's life. I found myself thinking about Hillcrest constantly. I couldn't shake the image of the students, people who were so dedicated to bettering their lives despite the obstacles they faced. They didn't have the luxury of simply going through the motions. They were fighting for something real. And here I was, living a life of comfort and security, but feeling empty and disconnected. They had something I didn't: purpose. The following weekend, I went back to the community center. I had to. I couldn't ignore it anymore. I walked through the same door, the familiar smell of books and coffee filling my senses. This time, it felt different. I wasn't just an observer. I was a part of something. Claire greeted me with a warm smile. "Glad to see you back, Lucas," she said as she motioned for me to take a seat. "We're about to start our adult literacy class. We could use an extra hand today, if you're up for it." I nodded, my heart racing. "I'm ready," I said, even though I wasn't entirely sure what that meant. I spent the next few hours helping students with reading and writing exercises. It wasn't glamorous work. It wasn't corporate, but it was real. I could see the difference I was making, even in small ways. One student, an older woman named Margaret, struggled with reading aloud. At first, she would stumble over every word, her face flushing with embarrassment. But when I sat with her, patiently guiding her through each sentence, something clicked. By the end of the class, she was reading with more confidence, and I could see the pride in her eyes. That was it. That was what I had been searching for. It wasn't about the paycheck or the prestige. It wasn't about climbing some corporate ladder. It was about making a real impact, no matter how small. It was about being present, about helping others discover their potential, just like I was starting to rediscover mine. When the class ended, Claire pulled me aside. "You're a natural, Lucas," she said. "You've got the heart of a teacher. I can see it. We could really use you here, full time. We need people who care, people who are willing to invest in this work." I felt a lump form in my throat. "I don't know if I'm ready for that," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "It's a huge change. I'm still not sure I can let go of everything I've built." Claire smiled gently, as if she understood exactly what I was feeling. "You don't have to have all the answers right now. Just take it one step at a time. We'll be here to support you, no matter what you decide." Those words stuck with me as I walked home that evening. One step at a time. That was all I needed to focus on. I didn't have to have it all figured out today or even tomorrow. But I had taken the first step. I had stepped into something that felt real, and that was enough for now. The next few days felt like a blur. I went back to my job at the investment firm, but my mind was no longer fully there. I kept thinking about Claire's words, "You've got the heart of a teacher." It echoed in my mind over and over, each time stronger, more insistent. I had spent so many years trying to convince myself that my life was fine, that I was happy, that the paycheck was enough to justify the emptiness. But now, sitting in front of my computer, sorting through financial reports, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was wasting time. Every click of the mouse, every number I crunched, seemed further from who I really was, who I was meant to be. I decided to go back to Hillcrest the following Saturday. I wasn't sure what I was expecting, but something deep inside me told me that I couldn't stay in the same place any longer. When I walked in, the familiar hum of activity greeted me. The murmur of students talking, the sound of pages turning, the soft clink of coffee mugs being placed on tables. This time, though, I felt different. I wasn't just another visitor. I wasn't just observing. I was part of something real. Claire greeted me warmly as usual. "You're back? How's everything going?" I hesitated for a moment before answering, unsure of what I was going to say. "Honestly, I've been thinking a lot about what you said, about making a real difference, and I'm starting to realize that I can't keep pretending that this other life is enough for me." She smiled, her eyes filled with understanding. "I knew you'd figure it out. Take it one day at a time. We're here for you. No pressure." I spent that Saturday working with the students again, helping them with reading, writing, and math. This time, I felt more connected, more present. There was a woman in her 50s, named Janet, who struggled with writing. She was slow and careful, but determined. I watched as she painstakingly wrote out a sentence, her hand trembling with nerves. I sat beside her, offering encouragement, helping her through the tougher words. When she finally finished, she looked at me with tears in her eyes. "I never thought I could do it," she said, voice shaking. "I never thought I could write my name properly again." The moment hit me harder than I expected. It wasn't just about the lesson. It was about what she had overcome to get there. Janet's story wasn't just about learning to read or write. It was about reclaiming a part of herself she thought was lost forever. In that moment, I realized I wasn't just teaching her skills. I was helping her reclaim her confidence, her dignity. That was the real power of teaching. Not just the knowledge you impart, but the hope you give. When the class ended, Claire asked me to stay for a bit. "I've been talking with the team, and we're really in need of someone like you. If you're ready, we'd love to bring you on full-time." The offer sat heavy in the air. I had been preparing myself for this moment, but now that it was here, I felt a rush of uncertainty. Full-time? It would mean leaving my secure job, the career I had worked so hard for, and diving into something completely unknown. Could I really make this change? Could I really give up the comfort of what I knew for the uncertainty of something I had only just started to explore? I took a deep breath, looking around the room, seeing the students gathered in small groups, laughing, learning, growing. The thought of staying in my current job, locked in a cycle of hollow work, suddenly seemed unbearable. I looked at Claire, her face full of expectation, and I felt a surge of clarity. "I'm ready," I said, surprising myself with the confidence in my voice. "I'll do it. I'll leave my job and come work here, full-time." Claire's smile widened, and she reached out to shake my hand. "Welcome to the team, Lucas." As I walked out of the center that day, something inside me clicked into place. I wasn't just stepping into a new job, I was stepping into a new life. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was exactly where I was meant to be. The days following my decision to leave my corporate job felt surreal, like I was living in a dream. I gave my notice at the investment firm, my manager looking both surprised and indifferent, but I didn't care anymore. I wasn't walking away from my career. I was walking towards something that felt right, even if it terrified me. The transition from financial analyst to full-time teacher at Hillcrest Community Learning Center was a leap into the unknown. The stability and familiarity of my old life were now behind me, and ahead of me was a path I had never dared to imagine for myself. The first few weeks at Hillcrest were a whirlwind. I had traded my polished suits and spreadsheets for casual clothes, worn-in jeans, and a worn-out backpack. The adjustment was jarring at first. I had to quickly get used to the rhythm of teaching, managing classes, preparing lessons, and working closely with students who were trying to rebuild their lives. There were moments when I felt like an imposter, questioning whether I truly had the skills to do this job, if I was even capable of teaching in the way these students deserved. But the more I spent time with them, the more I realized that what they needed wasn't perfection. It was someone who cared. They didn't expect me to have all the answers. They just needed me to be there, to listen, to guide them through the struggles they faced, whether it was a difficult math problem or a personal barrier they had to overcome. I found myself building real relationships with my students. There was Michael, a young father in his 20s, who struggled to read and write but was determined to improve so he could help his kids with their homework. Then there was Nora, a woman in her 40s who had been laid off from her job in retail and was looking to earn her GED. She was quieter than the others, but her determination shone through every time we worked together. These people weren't just learning, they were fighting for a better future, and being a part of that fight, even in a small way, gave me a sense of purpose that I had never experienced in my old job. Every day felt like I was exactly where I needed to be. But it wasn't easy. The workload was heavy, and there were days when I felt overwhelmed by the responsibility of shaping these lives. I sometimes stayed up late, planning lessons, figuring out how to meet each student's unique needs. It was exhausting, mentally and emotionally, but there was always this underlying sense of fulfillment, a feeling I had never gotten from crunching numbers in a stuffy office. One evening, after a particularly challenging class, I found myself walking back to my small apartment, reflecting on everything that had led me here. I realized that, despite the exhaustion, I had never felt more alive. The uncertainty of this new life was still there, but it no longer scared me. I wasn't afraid of not knowing what was going to happen next. I was embracing it. I had traded comfort for growth, and I knew that this was just the beginning. As I walked past the bustling streets of San Francisco, I caught a glimpse of myself in a store window. There I was, still me, but different. I had stopped running from my true self. I wasn't just existing anymore. I was living. I was making a difference in people's lives, and in doing so, I was changing my own. The path ahead was still unclear, but for the first time, I didn't need to have everything figured out. I knew I was on the right track. A few months had passed since I made the decision to leave my old life behind. The initial excitement of starting something new had settled into the quiet rhythm of daily work. Hillcrest had become my world, and I was slowly learning to navigate it with more confidence. I had settled into teaching, even though every class still felt like a challenge, pushing me to be better, to do more. The students were my constant source of inspiration, their stories and struggles driving me to give them the best I could. But it wasn't just about them anymore. As time passed, I started to realize that my own transformation was still unfolding. One afternoon, after class had ended, I was sitting at my desk when Claire came into the room, her usual bright smile lighting up the space. She had a way of making even the most mundane moments feel significant. "Lucas, I've been meaning to talk to you," she said, sitting down across from me. "You've been doing amazing work here. The students love you, but I think you need to take the next step." I blinked, unsure of what she meant. "What do you mean?" She leaned forward, her expression serious but supportive. "I think you're ready for more responsibility. We've been talking, and we'd like to offer you a position as the lead instructor for the adult literacy program. My heart skipped a beat. Lead instructor? I had barely gotten comfortable as an assistant teacher, and now she was talking about leading the entire program. 1,000 thoughts raced through my mind. Was I ready for that? Could I handle the pressure? Was this what I truly wanted? But before I could say anything, Claire continued. We've seen how much you care, Lucas. You're not just here to teach, you're here to change lives. And I think you're ready to take on more, to have a bigger impact. It won't be easy, but I believe you have it in you. The words hit me harder than I expected. The weight of the responsibility was daunting, but at the same time, something inside me clicked. This was what I had been working for. It was the next step on this journey I had started months ago, and despite my doubts, I could feel the pull of something bigger, something that mattered. I need some time to think about it, I said, my voice more tentative than I wanted it to be. Claire smiled warmly, as if she had been expecting that answer. Take all the time you need, but just know that we believe in you. And whenever you're ready, we'll be here. I spent the next few days in a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that I had already come so far. I had faced so many of my own fears, leaving my old job, stepping into something unknown, allowing myself to be vulnerable. Each of those steps had led me to this moment, and for the first time, I didn't feel like I was just pretending to have it all together. I had found something that was real, something that I could pour my heart into, and I wasn't going to back down now. The decision wasn't easy, but I finally knew what I had to do. I walked into Claire's office the following week and sat down across from her. I'm ready, I said, my voice steadier than I had expected. I'll take the position. Her smile was the brightest I'd ever seen. I knew you would. Welcome to the next chapter. As I left her office, I couldn't help but feel a surge of excitement. This was the moment I had been waiting for. It was the culmination of everything I had been working toward, a chance to make an even bigger difference, not just in my students' lives, but in my own as well. I didn't have all the answers, but I knew one thing for sure. This was where I was meant to be. Life often pushes us into roles and routines that feel safe, but leave us unfulfilled. If you feel stuck, don't be afraid to step out of your comfort zone. Listen to that inner voice telling you there's more to life than just existing. It's okay to take risks and pursue what truly resonates with your heart, even if it means letting go of what's familiar. Trust that the universe will guide you when you're ready to embrace change. Life isn't about having everything figured out. It's about taking one step at a time towards something that brings you meaning and purpose.